Hey there, Internet friends. Welcome to another episode of That Nerdy Site Show, a weekly podcast where the team members from That Nerdy Site get together to talk about our lives and all of the nerdy things we love about them. I'm your host, Trevor Starkey, and joining me this week we have Cameron Abbott. How you doing, Cameron?
What are we? Some kind of Suicide Squad? What up?
We consider that a little derogatory.
So good.
And we're also joined by Frank Bazzani this week. How you doing, Frank?
What are we? Some kind of Task Force X?
Much better, much better. So yes, if you hadn't gathered by the intros here, today is going to be all about The Suicide Squad. This is going to be our Spoilercast episode of the film that came out to theaters and HBO Max this last weekend. And I'm sure we will rag on the original Suicide Squad movie quite a bit, as we did there. But before we dive into that, as always, we will do our spoiler-free thoughts kind of first, and then we'll dive into spoiler-filled conversations. So if you haven't watched it yet, you can watch up to a certain point. We'll do all sorts of we'll give you plenty of warning to turn off if you need to, and I'll have the timestamps and everything in the show notes. Then come back. What's up, Cam?
You guys will have to talk about the previous Suicide Squad movie. I never saw it.
You never saw the original?
No, I heard what people said when they came out of it, and I realized I made a very wise decision by being too broke to afford a movie theater ticket that weekend.
All right, that's fair.
So,
I mean, you could have watched the original on HBO Max if you really wanted to. But yes, before we dive into the Suicide Squad thoughts, a little bit of housekeeping. If you like what you hear, please remember to like, subscribe, rate, review, share the podcast with your friends, all that fun stuff. And if you're feeling extra generous, you can always support us on Patreon at patreon.com/thatnerdysite, just like our wonderful Patreon producers do. Let's dive in. So, I mean, now we know Cameron has not seen the original Suicide Squad. I don't think you're missing out on anything really because of that. But,
I watched the Kind of Funny reacts to it.
There you go.
And from that, I got all the context I possibly needed for this film already. I was good.
Fair indeed. So let's dive in then kind of up front with spoiler-free thoughts of the film. Frank, let me know your thoughts first here.
I definitely really like this movie. I know we had kind of talked beforehand, before the movie was even out, that I'm a huge fan of James Gunn, and I definitely like his work going back for a really long time, even before Guardians. Mm-hmm. And so I think he honestly has only gotten better, especially he gets kind of these bigger budgets and more freedom to do some crazier things. And I think he definitely killed it in this movie. I also think a lot of the actors were also great in this movie, from Idris Elba and even Harley Quinn, Margot Robbie. Is that Harley Quinn? Yeah. Yep. Okay. They were great, and honestly, even I can't remember his name either, but Rick Flag was awesome, and I really liked him. Even he was all right in the first Suicide Squad, but he was great in Altered Carbon, the Netflix show.
Yep.
And I think he was awesome here, and I like the whole cast and a lot of what they had going on, and I think the action and some of the gore and some of the stuff it could be intense sometimes, but I think that was really awesome, and I think that's what the Suicide Squad is. I think he gets that. I think the Suicide Squad is very James Gunn, and I think he just totally got the concept and the ideas and he ran with it. And I also shout out to Polka Dot Man, because he I don't know if you guys had heard this, but James Gunn said that he Googled what was the stupidest character in the DC universe, and that was the result. And he was like, okay, he's going to be in the Suicide Squad. Nice.
I had not heard of that, no. Joel Kinnaman is who plays Rick Flag, tying into that. I love that that's why Polka Dot Man is in this. And I'm very curious how Condiment King did not top out Polka Dot Man. Personally, but even that, I don't know if you guys have watched the Harley Quinn animated show, but that's one that has had a ton of fun, also kind of poking fun at these D-list villains and stuff, including Condiment King. I don't think Polka Dot Man has made an appearance on that show, or if he has, it was a pop-up and then gone. But cool. Cameron, what were your thoughts on the film?
So my history with James Gunn is I originally saw the film Super when it came not too long after it had come out at a friend's house, and I was really enthralled by it because it was such a bonkers take on a low budget superhero film, and had like just some wild stuff. But it was essentially, for anybody who doesn't know, it's a trauma film starring Rainn Wilson, Elliot Page, as well as what's her name? I almost said Sigourney Weaver, but that's not right. She's the daughter of Aerosmith frontman. She was
Liv Tyler.
Liv Tyler, thank you. Liv Tyler's in it. Fantastic in it. Like, it's a really, really good movie. But it's a trauma film, which means that it's a B-level film that is chock full of like surrealist violence and like stuff. Like, it doesn't hold back. Like, if somebody gets shot, it doesn't hold back about like what a gunshot actually looks like on the human body. And so knowing his past and watching a few of his even older films after I watched Super, and then he got Guardians of the Galaxy, I'm like, well, he's clearly not going to be going full trauma on Guardians, and that's fine. Like, and he ended up doing an amazing job on it. And then he got fired by Marvel because of like tweets from 2008, which like that reminds me I should probably delete some of mine. That's a joke. I don't have offensive tweets from back then, but anyway. But yeah, he got fired from Marvel and later brought back to Marvel. But in that in between time, he was free to sign a deal to write and direct a Suicide Squad movie. And my first thought when I heard that was, hell's yes. I cannot wait to see what he does with it. Then I saw the trailer, like the sneak peek trailer that he debuted. And I was like, oh my, like, yes, this is it. This is it. This is 100% it. And it 100% nailed it for me. Like, this is what I wanted to see out of a Suicide Squad property. This is what I want to see out of, like, the DC expanded universe has so much room for these alternative kind of films within its same universe, that it's just phenomenal, to the point where, like, they make references to, like, why one of the guys is in prison and, like, what he did to get there. And it's, like, such a cool, like, yeah, that first off, I believe that did happen. And second off, it's awesome that, like, that's his backstory of how he got sent to Bellevue prison. It's Bell Rev. Thank you. Bell Rev prison. It's awesome. I really enjoyed it. He plays perfectly between super, person, like metahuman super person film matching with trauma aesthetics with just a good fun time that you'd get from a Guardians type film. And he just puts it all together to like what I think is a quintessential perfect package for a film like the Suicide Squad. So
cool. Yeah. So when we talked about doing this episode earlier in the week, it was very kind of like, am I going to watch it? Yes or no was where I was at with it. I did end up kind of watching it. So because the one of the elements that I think you guys have both kind of touched on is like the gore of this. And that was one of the things I'd heard about, without diving into spoilers or anything like that. I had heard that it was a very violent movie, and that's just really not my cup of tea. So I actively like went out and sought out like spoiler recaps and like read like everything that was going to happen in the movie and like how it was going to be and all that stuff. So I was like prepared for it. And even then, I largely like watched it on my laptop while I was usually doing something else, like while I was playing a video game or something like that. Because I was like, I don't want to be looking directly at the screen when somebody like gets shot and like just half their body is missing or something like that. Which is, I mean, like
happens a lot.
In the trailers, you see King Shark like ripping a man in half and stuff. So it's not like a spoiler or anything. Like it is a very violent and a very gruesome and gory movie, and like really leans into his kind of trauma origins. And so yeah, it was I watched it and I enjoyed it. I'm probably the coolest of the three of us on it because that aesthetic doesn't really jive for me, and it's one of those like I like what it's doing and everything, and I like the humor of it, I like the heart in a lot of it, and I think that's a great blend. But like the over the top violence is a turnoff for me, and so it's probably not going to be something like I actively like rewatch all that often, or I'll do the same kind of thing where like I'll throw it on my laptop while I'm playing a game or something like that, maybe. But yeah, that's like I'm ultimately glad I sat down and like watched it, but it's definitely one that like I'm glad I didn't. I'm glad I could do it from the comfort of my own home in HBO, like on HBO Max, and didn't have to go see it in a theater where I'd kind of be like forced to like experience it all before me without like just like having my head down pretty much the whole time or something like that. Because yeah, it was definitely, if I hadn't done that, I would have been like tense and stressed out. And even still, like even knowing when things were coming and stuff, I was still like sometimes kind of like watching through fingers and stuff like that. So yeah, it's not my cup of tea in that visual style and that visual storytelling sense. But like the other elements I enjoyed enough to ultimately make it like a good experience. I'm glad I watched it. I just like, there's part of me that's like, I wish there had been like a PG-13 cut of this or something that wasn't as gruesome and violent, but still had like the humor and the heart behind it. Cause it's not like a ton of it comes from, I mean, at least for me, like a lot of the humor didn't come from the over the top violence. But like it does, I mean, it obviously does play into who this squad is and stuff like that. We can talk about certain moments and stuff when we dive into the spoiler filled stuff. But yeah, I did ultimately end up like sort of watching it. I like, there are definitely points that I was more listening to what was going on than actually like eyes on the screen that we'll talk about. But yeah, ultimately it was fun, great cast, and yeah, great performances, and James Gunn is really good at bringing in like, you know, a band of misfits and not getting so hung up on like why they're misfits, and just kind of like accepting that they're misfits and moving on beyond that and telling a story with those characters. You know, there was a tweet out there that I saw that's basically like, you know, James Gunn introduces, you know, a man-sized weasel character into this world, and like interdimensional polka dots, with no real like no getting hung up on the explanation behind that or anything like that. And it's just kind of like he introduces these things. These are things that exist in this world, and everybody kind of accepts it and moves on. And it's like, yeah, there you go. So yeah, those are kind of my spoiler-free thoughts on the thing. Any last thoughts before we dive into spoiler territory and talk about all the fun, you know, bloody deaths and all that goodness in a film called The Suicide Squad?
Yeah, I think I would have one last thought to put out there, which is, for anybody who heard what Trevor just said and thought, well, maybe Trevor's being a bit too sensitive. He's not. I want to back up Trevor in this and saying Trevor 100% is in the right about like I wouldn't call it hyper violence, but I would certainly call it like a gratuitous violence for sure. Like it is violent. Like there is not violence for violence sake. Violence happens in this film because of the direct cause and actions of others. It's not just like violence happens out of nowhere. It has its purpose in place. Mm-hmm. However, the violence that happens is visceral. It is very real. And it is like, if you are squeamish at all about it, I don't even want to use the term squeamish because that like would put off like, oh, my tummy, oh no, I'm squeamish. It's more of a, if you don't want to be subjected to just a lot of violence.
Yeah.
I mean, like, take Trevor's note.
It is very much a content warning kind of like,
Mm-hmm.
like this is R, and it fully utilizes the R rating in its violence. One of the recaps that I looked at, which I occasionally do when I you know do these kinds of things, was the IMDb like parental guide that like breaks it down by like, you know, violence and gore and like language and, you know, sexual activity and drug use and stuff like that. And like pretty much all of them are like severe. And they go through kind of like point by point of like, here are the things that happen that like might be upsetting to people. And I was like, and watching, like reading that, like definitely again helped me prepare, so I wasn't going in like going to be super stressed out about it. But even knowing what was coming, there's a difference between like knowing that somebody's face is going to get shot off and then seeing somebody's face get shot off. It's like, oh,
and it happens.
I did not need to. Like it's like, ooh, that they definitely like.
The face is gone.
I remember seeing
the face is now a cavern of skull.
Yeah, I remember seeing James Gunn talk about how like this by like leaps and bounds has like the most visual effects of anything he's done, including the Guardians movies. And it's like, yep, like there are a lot of visual effects for moments like that and stuff. So it was definitely like, it is a violent movie, and it does not shy away from that at all. I don't think there's any moment where he was like, maybe that's going a little too far. At least it doesn't feel like he had any moment where he pulled back on the violence a little bit.
No. But I also wanted to point out, like, but it's also not gratuitous in the sense of there's violence just for the sake of, hey, there's a scene here, we should have people get blown into pieces and murdered and stuff. It's like there is a point and plot to the story, but the means by which these people accomplish them are violent means, because that's who these characters are. Yeah, these are
all bad guys. These are all bad guys who, many of them are bad at being bad guys, but like it is like, these are your murderers and your violent criminals of the DC universe. Some of them just happen to have like a weird skill set behind it. Frank, anything to add?
Yeah, a couple quick things that are still spoiler free. Jumping off that last point, like I think the movie plays with that really well and has like a couple fun moments and beats, even besides just the fact that they're violent to get through it. Like I think they're just like, they play with them being bad guys in like a fun way. I also wanted to give a shout out to John Cena, his Peacemaker. I thought he was great in this movie, and like I was surprised in F9 that I thought he was pretty good in that, and I think he's better in this even. And
100%.
And then the other thing I even wanted to give a shout out to, piggybacking off of what you guys were talking about too, is the special effects. Like, because not only is there a lot of them, like they're all really good. Mm-hmm. Like there wasn't any that I particularly was like, oh, that looks bad, or that like took me out of it. Like I thought everything looked really good and even was like really realistic. And there's just a ton of amazing effects in that. So I definitely shout out to that team as well, because and the. Going even back to some of the direction, and even so, like the action in this movie is also, I think, done incredibly well. I like everything always makes sense. It always lines up. Like I think everything is even like super realistic, even though some people have powers that are crazy. It's like everything I think makes sense. And I think like going back in comparison to like F9 again, like there's scenes in that just straight up don't make sense and that are just bad. And like this doesn't have any of that. And there was a moment or two where I was worried that we were going to run into that territory. But it totally just kind of subverted all of that. And I think every action scene was at least, I think all of them were pretty good, if not just incredible.
Mm-hmm.
One last shout out I want to give is shout out to the costume department, because there was never anybody in an outfit that either A, didn't make sense, or B, just wasn't spectacular in its own special way.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it was I almost said Man Shark, but
King Shark.
King Shark, yeah, King Shark. Him wearing having just wave pattern board shorts was just fun.
I love that you're giving that as a shout out to the costume department, despite the fact that King Shark is entirely a CGI character.
CGI, that's true. Played by Sylvester Stallone. That's true.
Yeah.
No, but also everybody's outfit though, even from the design of it for King Shark to the more practical ones like what Harley and Rick Flag wear, to some of the more interesting ones like what Bloodsport wears. Like Bloodsport's entire outfit as part of his weapon system is just spectacular, and I loved it. Like, I don't think there was anybody here who I thought was just even some of the more not super interesting ones were still killing it as far as their look and style was concerned. So
yeah, it definitely felt very true to the comic book origins, and so in some cases that was really playing into the over the top nature of the comic book costumes and outfits and stuff. And then there were a handful that were okay, this is a good interpreted for film version of what their costume might have been elsewhere. Frank.
I totally agree with that. And one I wanted to even give a shout out to, because of course Bloodsport I think was my favorite overall, but even Pete Davidson's, was he Blackguard, I think. I even like that costume, and to Cam's point, that's a more subdued, just kind of normal costume, but the black and gold I thought was super killer, and he does just look like a kind of a guy that would be in the Suicide Squad. And I mean that in the film version, a very realistic, he looks like a soldier, like a mercenary or something like that.
When he's at the beginning, when he's going for his gun to fake out the guard,
I thought that was
and the
so
guard's like,
funny.
"Don't you do it! Don't you do it!" It's
Yeah.
so good. Pulls off everything. It pulls off so well.
One last thing I want to, since you reminded me of this when you gave John Cena the shout out. I want to highlight some of the really standout performances that I really enjoyed. John Cena is one. Idris Elba as Bloodsport is really good. We already talked about Margot Robbie as Harley Quinn, as well as Joel Kinnaman as Rick Flag. Daniela Melchior is really good as Ratcatcher too. I think she has like the a lot of the heart of the film in a way.
I think so. Yeah, she definitely carries the heart of the film for sure.
Yeah, so I think those were like a lot of my standouts. And then one thing I will yes, it's cool that Sylvester Stallone is playing King Shark. I don't quite know that I like this interpretation of King Shark, especially
you like Ron Funches versions from the animated show, right?
Yeah, especially after the Ron Funches version, where I don't. King Shark here feels a little too Grooty for me. In that I'm there's this idea of James Gunn took Vin Diesel, and Vin Diesel is great casting for somebody that can only say I am Groot. And Sylvester Stallone is, great casting for a shark if you're going to make that shark a really stupid character. I just don't necessarily know that I would have made King Shark a really stupid character. But that's my my personal thoughts on that. What he does with it is fun, and the character is fun as well. It's just I think that's a different interpretation that I wasn't expecting / didn't. I guess I was expecting it given the trailers and stuff where we've seen of that character pop up and stuff, but it was still I don't know if that was what I was expecting from King Shark, Lord of the Sea kind of character. But anyway, cool. So let us then dive in. So it's the last chance for you to duck out if you're listening and don't want to dive into kind of the spoiler conversation around this film. Again, you can go see it in theaters. You can go see it on HBO Max. But yeah, there's definitely a lot of violence in it. So if you are, wary of that, as I am, just kind of, I guess, be prepared for that going in. So yes, diving into the spoiler conversation now, I will throw it to you first here, Cam. What were your spoiler-filled thoughts of the Suicide Squad? Especially, since you don't have the experience of having seen the really bad last one.
Yeah. I will definitely say that my spoiler-free or filled thoughts are... there are 3 things that I can't believe they made work. 1, I can't believe they made Starro as good as it was. Mm-hmm. And actually, even to the point where his last line was, I was happy just being among the stars, looking out among the stars. And it's he himself was also a victim to the machinations of the American government. 2, I did not expect for there to be so many phenomenal small piece characters, whether it was the quick follow through of Luna to what's his name? Basically General 1 to General 2. For the
Corto Maltese,
the Corto Maltese leaders.
Yeah.
Moving 1 to 2. Harley with that great, I'm looking out for red flags, and I'm not sure, but I'm pretty sure killing kids is a red flag. Mm-hmm. And I promised myself that when I saw one, I would do the sensible thing and murder the person. It's so good. I love, as somebody who saw Birds of Prey last year and fell deeply in love with Margot Robbie's interpretation of Harley Quinn. Just outstandingly phenomenal in what she does with it. I've always been a big fan of Margot Robbie ever since I saw her in Wolf of Wall Street for the first time. She's phenomenal in everything she does. And she's just great. And so having her have this wonderful also shout out to Luna, because that dude looked good. Mm-hmm. When he comes out of the pool in his Speedo and he's just oh, okay, here we are. And so, in this, you're the perfect fit, but also their interpretation of Harley as the quintessential paragon of anti-capitalist virtues
Mm-hmm.
in America. Like, weird that they got that interpretation from it, but they're rolling with it, and I dig it. And just everything that they do. Rick Flag, I was really impressed with, to the point where, like, I did not expect him to die like
Mhm.
that.
Yeah. Same.
For him to basically just be like, no, but I also, and that just turns over to John Cena as Peacekeeper. Peacemaker, thank you. Yeah. Because Peacemaker is also the name of the gun, which is why I was like, I wasn't sure 100% every time I say it. But anyway, so Peacemaker, phenomenal. Oh my gosh, in his tighty whities.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it's just like John Cena.
That's racist.
Yeah, that was a good bit.
Why are you in your tighty whities? That's racist. It's like, that's not racist. Like, it's so good on so many levels of, just he has he delivers the most ridiculous lines with just that 100% commitment that John Cena does for every single line he's given. And which is why he nails those comedic bits so well. I love peace. I cherish it more than anything else.
I'll kill every man, woman, and child to preserve it. Yeah.
Preserve it. Just like perfect. His him and Idris Elba's like kill off in the village going forward, and like, you know, I will never forget the moment with the hatchet.
Yeah.
Where he takes
the guy
it, he
who's
cuts
sleeping.
it, and the guy who's sleeping just like as he's just walking briskly by, just bah, 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 bah. And then just like perfect. You only wounded that guy. Nope, exploding bullet.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, like that's not whatever. It's great when it makes it look badass. He's right.
It's dope as fuck though.
It's dope as fuck.
He's right. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. It works when it's dope as fuck.
Yeah. That's like real quick. I just want to jump it. Like, I didn't want to mention it in the spoiler free stuff, but like that sequence in particular, I think is like violence for not violence for violence sake, but violence for incredible comedy as like an escalating battle between everybody, with the ultimate payoff being like, those were the freedom fighters, those were not bad guys, and those were like, and you get the vibe of that even going in, where like, because some lady's just like washing clothes or something like that, and they just like pop her in the head or whatever.
Oh yeah. Like, people are like living a very simple village life in this scene, and they're like, and they're the gorillas. But what I loved about that scene also is, we finally get, like, it's the payoff of, like, what does he do? Throw polka dots at people? Mm-hmm. And then it, like, holy shit, he throws polka dots at people.
Yeah.
And it's like, and he goes, yeah, I normally I wouldn't be able to ever like hurt anybody, but then I just imagine them as my mom.
Mm-hmm.
Which, like, oh my God.
That is a great runner throughout. Yeah. Like,
perfect.
Because it's one of like it's set up, and it's like, oh, that's like a fun Freudian like thing. But then like every time you like see things from his perspective, and you see like all of his moms on the dance floor with him, or all of his moms like when he says like they're everyone is my mom or whatever, it cuts to like the view of the squad, and like all of them are that actress, and then Starro as the mom. It's like,
oh, perfect.
Yeah. Like, you know who that is? That's your fucking mom. Like,
so good. Oh, it's so good. Like the way that they play that with it. I really enjoyed that actor in some of the other stuff he's been in with Christopher Nolan's films.
Yeah, David Dalmatian.
Yeah, but he had an interview. I forgot where the interview's in. It might have been like Deadline or Vice or something, but it's essentially looking at him as like an actor, and like kind of like these big break moments that he got. And he's a super cool dude, a very introspective kind of actor in the roles that he's played, but he just does this so well. And like, whether it was him being the Russian in Ant-Man or him being Polka Dot Man here, like, he's just been on a really killer streak of like some like very good character acting over the several years. Mm-hmm. And it's just, he's great at it. Polka Dot Man was like, I loved it because it's like that scene in the middle of the night where like the virus has gotten to the point where he hasn't expunged polka dots.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's swelled up inside of him like the mumps. Mm-hmm. And he goes and he like pukes out polka dots in the bush, and then comes back. And then when he explains his backstory, they're like, so what's the deal with the polka dots? He goes, my mom was a researcher at Star Labs, and she decided she wanted to make me and my brothers and sisters all superheroes. And they're like, wait, what? And it turns out like he basically gives this like very brief description of being like raised as a lab rat in a torturous, like horrible existence as a child where like some of his siblings are dead because of it and others are in places worse than death. And he has a literal virus that infects him with polka dots. And it's ridiculous and stupid and amazing and also heartfelt and heartbreaking because you're like, this dude is very much just a very nice person who wants to do good, but is infected with a virus that makes him spew polka dots if he doesn't shoot him at people. Like, it's great.
Yeah.
Freaking love it. Everything from that to one of the best moments in the entire film. Waller's walking with a Bloodsport and says, each member of the squad is chosen for their unique and particular set of skills and background. Meet Peacemaker. His father was a mercenary and raised him from birth. He goes, hold up.
Are you messing with me? Are you messing with me? Like,
he does the exact same thing.
Yeah.
But I do it with smaller bullets.
Yeah.
Just also that payoff of that line at the beginning of Smaller Bullets to the end, and it's so good. Like, everything about this film is set up so well. What Peter Capaldi as the Thinker, phenomenal. Like, what was going on with the experiments is horrific and terrible and terrifying. And like, it's like, oh my gosh, this is madness. This is absolutely disgusting. And then he's like, and it was the Americans who backed it all along. And Flag's just like, well, okay, cool. Fuck this. I'm good. Where's the hard drive? I'm taking it. And then Peacemaker's turn on him. And it's like, no, I don't want this to happen, but it's happening. And this is going to be awesome. And it was. Yeah. Also, shout out to Taika Waititi as Ratcatcher 1.
Yeah. Frank,
so many things. I love this film. I love this film.
Yeah, we will definitely dive into some favorite moments and favorite characters stuff as we continue the conversation. Frank, what were your thoughts?
Yeah, no, I totally agree with pretty much all that. Like, a lot of those were also some of my favorite moments as well. But even, taking that a step back, like, I think the movie is just fun the entire way through, even from the beginning, And I think it started off in a way that I somewhat expected, because based on the trailer, I definitely got the idea that like there was one team that was just going to get completely like wiped out.
Yeah.
And another team was going to like, be assembled. But I think they kind of even subverted that slightly from what my expectation was.
Yeah.
I think they played with that in a good way.
Same. Yeah. I definitely, like, from all the promotional stuff, even like back when they were like, here's all the people in this, I was like, okay, well, clearly some of these guys are like so D-list level that they're gonna be in like one seed. And then like when you look at the trailers and stuff, and it is like, okay, yeah, clearly like this squad of people that are like walking out aren't in a whole bunch of the other action scenes that you see throughout the film, so they're probably gonna get wiped out. But yeah, to that subversion idea, the idea that they were like, I definitely went in expecting like Team 1 is going to go in and gets like completely decimated, and then like Team 2 comes in and like, goes. I was not expecting them to be like simultaneously on the mission, and like Team 1 is the distraction so that Bloodsport's group like gets to go in like basically unimpeded and stuff.
You didn't think TDK was going to just take care of everything?
Oh yeah,
or DTK?
No.
Yeah.
Yeah, no. It's TDK
TDK
and Javelin. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, so
I wanted
good.
to see him do something and
he did do stuff, and then he got shot a bunch in the chest,
which is super realistic for that character in that moment, which is kind of what I like about a lot of that.
He gives Harley her motivation for the film. Where am I
figure out what she's supposed to do with that javelin? Yeah,
it's so good. Just like her. When you get in that plane and Harley's there, and all of a sudden, like, you can tell, like, Boomerang's happy to have her there. Rick Flag is like super stoked that she's there. And it's like, okay, cool. So like these lasting members have friendships. And so like when Boomerang dies, Harley's heartbroken over it.
Yeah. And that's like the one thing that I think you would like, I guess, clearly you didn't miss it because you picked up on it, but like him being one of the carryovers from the last movie, like there's
getting brutally murdered by helicopter blades.
I mean, yeah, there's this like notion that like, oh, maybe he's going to be safe. But again, like I saw him with the group of everybody else that I figured was going to die to show just how expendable those people are. So I was like, yeah, I'm pretty sure Boomerang Man is not long for this world. And so, yeah, like seeing him get like, decimated and then, yeah, like just a helicopter explosion. I loved so I did not like the violence of that opening sequence, but like I enjoyed the creativity behind the violence, I guess, especially like once everybody's dead and it goes into like the opening montage of like the credits kind of roll, where you see basically like all of the dead bodies on the and like for Boomerang Man you just see his hand, and because I was definitely like, how are they going to do it for him, because we saw him basically just explode into a million pieces when that helicopter flew into him. So I appreciate that it was like, oh, here's the Death Star landing on the moon of, you know, Endor or whatever. Here's like the one part of his body that remained intact enough for that shot with him like holding up the boomerang and stuff. But yeah, it is definitely like the fact that like Flag and Harley are the only two that really survive it, and I guess Weasel technically being the only survivors of that like batch. It's like, yep, well, I guess maybe TDK could still be alive. I think the last thing we see of him is like he's in critical condition, because it was just his arms were getting shot to shit. Like the rest of him,
oh my gosh, so good, like
theoretically fine.
TDK, you're up. Got it.
TDK stands for the detachable kid. What? I love Rick Flag being like, I didn't pick the damn team.
Just like his arms popping off, and you still see like the bone sockets. And it's like a freaking like action figure.
Yeah,
from like the 90s that you pull the arms off of, and it's like, and then he like goes over and just like starts slapsticking the
it was like just like. How is that like a useful character, like just in general? Like that is the epitome of like a bad guy who is bad at being bad, because like him just like awkwardly like flailing and like punching like arms or whatever until people just start shooting the shit out of them. Yeah, it was just like, what is that ability? And then I mean, like you mentioned,
it's an Afghan hound. It's an Afghan hound.
Yeah, there you go. You mentioned,
you think it's a dog? Is it a werewolf? Werewolf.
Yeah,
that's the entire opening scene's so good. Man.
TDK. It stands for my name. It's just letters. All names are letters. Dickhead.
Like, I thought that was really funny. Yeah, that was another good line.
Yeah, I mean, like that. Like immediately, it's something obviously we knew to expect from Guardians of the Galaxy and stuff. Like James Gunn is really good at like giving these characters like immediate banter that makes them likable and endearing to us. We obviously get more with the other like more, you know, dominant squad for the film, but yeah, like the you know, the B team that we get kind of in that opening beach scene like gets the, you know, they get to make the most of the little time that they have in that helicopter trip out there.
Oh, it's great. I love that fact that Pete Davidson's character is named Blackguard, and Blackguards are calling somebody a blackguard is basically calling somebody a turncoat. Like you blackguard or like you turncoat, like you can't be trusted. And the first thing it turns out, he contacted the government to tell them they were going to land there. Yeah.
Yeah. That was so before I like really did like the deep dive into like everything that's going on. I think I mentioned when we were recording that D Plus show the other night, like I basically like watched that opening beach scene, but I didn't watch it. I just had like the laptop turned away, so I was just listening to it and hearing all that happen and stuff, and just like and even just listening to it, I was like, oh god, there's this. Yeah, this is gonna be a lot. And so when I finally did actually sit down and watch, I was like, yep. And then again, like reading that Pete Davidson's face gets shot off is very different than seeing Pete Davidson's face get shot off. And I was like, oh god, yep, this is what I have, what is in store for me in the violence of this film. And I mean, that opening sequence is probably the most violent that it gets throughout. But it's basically like, hey, this is immediately setting up the tone for this. So if you're not on board for this, like, here's your opportunity to step away now.
Yeah, I don't think on the scale of everything, I don't think anything gets to as like approaching that level of violence in like such a large scale. But I would say the only thing that really comes to mind is the Starro Lab part, but that's a very different kind of
I mean,
it's like, intense violence.
You get like little bits and pieces of it throughout. Yeah, you get the Thinker being like ripped in half by Starro. You get Peacemaker killing Rick Flag, and then like other people have described it like this as well, but like the Mortal Kombat X-ray shot into his heart to see the thing stabbed into his heart.
I think that's just to confirm, like, we are not messing around.
Yeah,
Rick Flag is
dead.
he's
dead.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. And then what was it? And then you have like some of the isolated, bits of, King Shark eating, just like chomping down on a guy and like seeing a head in his mouth or whatever. Like there are other isolated bits
as
of
it looks around. It's so good.
Yeah,
such a trauma move.
But definitely like the opening sequence there on the beach, like up through Savant, freaking out, getting all this immediate post PTSD, and then running away, and Amanda Waller blowing up her head. That's what I think I described the other day when we were talking about it. I was like, there's a difference between like how dumb it was handled with Slipknot in the first movie, where like, he goes rogue and then like you just kind of hear an explosion off screen and he like his body falls to the ground, versus like the camera being like on Michael Rooker's, body when the head explodes, and then you get to see it from like 2 or 3 different angles, and then you get like a bird eating, the entrails of his, corpse.
Hey, that was karma, man.
I mean,
after he smashed the bird at the beginning, that was awesome. I love James Gunn does so great with these wonderful karmic parallels between characters, and it's just awesome to see. Also massive shout out to Idris Elba's like chemistry with his daughter in this film. Like, just phenomenal. You stole, okay, so, well, next time you do it, just have a lookout.
Yeah.
That's what you say to me? That's what you say to your daughter after she just got, like, caught stealing? What do you want me to say to her? You are such a bad, I never wanted to be your father. Like, that entire, like, oh, you thought this was going to be like, I'm a good dad and I want to be a good dad for my kid, Will Smith version? No. Idris Elba's making it very clear he does not like the idea of being a father. He doesn't think he should be a father. And the fact that he has a daughter upsets him greatly. And
but he still goes on the whole thing to save her. So yeah, like it does. He in the end he does care, and that's great. But like just his interactions with her are phenomenal. And then at the very end when she goes, "That's my dad," like like my dad's out there doing like a good thing as like a hero, like a heroic person. That's awesome. Yeah, and it's like okay, cool, like. I loved all of that. I loved the interactions and everything else, but I really think the chemistry between all the actors and even the CGI rat Sebastian were phenomenal. Yeah.
Shout out to Sebastian. I totally thought he was going to die at 2 different parts of this film, and he survived all of it, which is the proof that God does love me, because he did not hurt this Sebastian. Am I a Sebastian stan?
You're not the first one to make that joke.
I'm not. It's low hanging fruit. I'm not surprised.
Pretty sure Tim made that exact same joke on the kind of funny in review on this one.
I don't think I watched like the first quarter of it. I don't think he's gotten to that joke yet. But even if he had, like, it's low hanging fruit. I'm not surprised other people have said it. It's okay.
Yeah. I mean that dives into the relationship, obviously, that Idris Elba or that Bloodsport has with his daughter. Obviously, we get to see him really kind of have that with Ratcatcher 2 throughout the film, as kind of a surrogate daughter, and like they make their pact of like getting each other out alive and all that stuff. And I love Ratcatcher 2 especially because like she's like the things she's done are nowhere near as bad as the things other people have done. Clearly, like she clearly just like she got caught, robbing a bank or whatever, and it's armed robbery because they considered the rats, armed or whatever. But like her whole her backstory with like Taika Waititi, I loved how that was like presented. First of all, of like they're on the minibus or whatever, and you see it kind of like just in the reflection of the window of like him, his demons being like heroin addiction and stuff like that. And then, of course, the real payoff being when we get that line from him at the end of like, "Why rats, Papa?" Well, because rats are the lowliest of us, and if they have a purpose, then so do we all. Like that's like
such a great moment.
There are a lot of like great like final lines of characters throughout this. That the Star one we already talked about.
When she's when she comes back from that flashback and she's holding up the light, and it's like this heroic music, heroic pose, and it's like that's so fucking cool, because it's like this very like heartwarming moment in like the middle of all this chaos, that she's like, she really is the heroic character in this moment with what she's doing and her actions. On the flip side of that, I would also say Rick Flag has the fucking best "fuck you" line right before he dies. Peacemaker.
What a joke. Yeah.
And then like, fuck. Also, when Peacemaker then gets up and then realizes Ratcatcher 2 saw him kill him, it's like that moment of, it's like, not like lines have been crossed, like things have been seen, things have been said, things have been done. They can't go back in the bottle. Like, you can't put the genie back in the bottle. Like,
yeah,
Peacemaker is going to try to kill her.
Yep.
And it's so damn good.
Yeah. So we mentioned Sebastian. I want to give a couple shout outs. One, the voice of Sebastian, D. Bradley Baker, who we just talked about in the Clone Wars on, of course, because he's the one who plays all the clones and in the Bad Batch and stuff. But then also the two, there are two credited Sebastian rats, one named Jaws, and then the other one named Crisp Rat, R-A-T-T. So it's, a fun little Chris Pratt reference. I appreciated that.
Very, very nice. I like that a lot. And it was great. Like, man, no, I love Sebastian, even to the point where, like, at the end, Bloodsport's just like trying to get over his phobia by petting the rat after it's like pawed its way into his lap. And it's like, by the way, I 100% was just like waiting on the edge of my seat for King Shark to bite to try to eat Ratcatcher 2 again at the end.
Oh no!
I was like, I don't want this to happen, but I can't help but feel like he's gonna pull a fast one on us real quick, right before the end.
I didn't think that was.
Turns out the fast one was a weasel was alive.
Yeah,
so.
Yeah. I didn't think we were gonna get that. I think I think it's an interesting when that gets introduced of like King Shark trying to eat her while she's like asleep or whatever, and then like her not believing it until the rat confirms it, until Sebastian confirms it.
You would eat your friends. No friends.
Yeah, no friend. Yeah, whatever.
And she's like, you don't have, well, we're your friends now. And then I'm like, I'm just waiting for this to blow up in somebody's face. And then it doesn't. And I'm like, you know what? Okay, I'm okay with that. Like,
yeah.
You subverted my expectations by my expectations being the bad thing. And you subverted them by giving me the good thing, which is a very James Gunn thing to do.
Yeah. Also James Gunn, I mean, I guess I guess I would say this is like him given like the Yondu moment in Guardians 2, but like we touched on Polka Dot Man a lot earlier, but I definitely like his like final moment is like, that gut punch of like, I'm a superhero, I'm a fucking super Star just crushing him. Poor Polka Dot Man getting his like one, bright moment to shine, and then just immediately being ripped away from us.
He shined the entire film for me.
Yeah.
Like like that's what I think is probably one of the best parts, is like I don't think there's ever like a scene where somebody shines in this film. I feel like from beginning to end, this ensemble cast just absolutely is brilliant from beginning to end.
It's I mean shine in like he got like his characters like got the the hero moment, and then just immediately like a punch to the gut for you. Frank, any favorite moments here? Anything you want to give some love to, give some highlights on?
Yeah, something we haven't talked about yet that I did want to give a shout out to is the scene with Milton way at the end.
When Milton gets shot, you mean?
Yeah.
Because they killed Milton. Who?
Yeah, and he's like, "Who the fuck is Milton?" And then, Idris Elba is like, "He was still with us." And I was like, and because I had that moment when he was like going in with them, where I was like, "Why is he here?" And as he was doing stuff with them, I was like, "Well, he's helping them, I guess." And when he just gets gunned down, like that part is obviously unfortunate, but their banter in between that, when they're just hiding between the cubicles, is hilarious. Like that whole scene is great.
Wait, you're saying we had a guy with us the whole time whose name was Milton?
And then I
don't think we had anybody named Milton. I would have remembered that. That's a unique name. He was right there, like that entire and then at the very end she goes, "You're my friend too, Milton."
Not my
it's
name.
Not my name.
Yeah, we had a whole conversation about it. Yeah,
so good. Just also like gives out that like, hey, I know Flag wanted us to give it to the media, but like, this is what we got to do for us right now.
Mm-hmm.
Like such a good, like, one, I love the fact that like Flag's here. Yeah, he's the one who recommended you. Like, immediately establishes everything you need to know, that these two know each other very well and are on good terms with each other.
Mm-hmm.
And then when they're reunited, they immediately feel like they have been working together for years. Love the bar scene where they're hanging out and like Flag has like that cowboy hat on and it is phenomenal. John Cena looks still like he might as well still have the helmet on.
Yeah.
He looked great in that scene. I don't know what you're talking about. That polo and those jean shorts, and I think he had like Reeboks on or something. Like he was killing it.
Oh, he was killing it. Everybody killed it. Everybody's drip in that scene was phenomenal. Hands down, like great. Like like everybody was there. Like it's like your Havana Nights wardrobe selection was just peak perfection right there. Which once again, costuming in this film is phenomenal. Like just everything from like James Gunn is so good about everything he does, but also the team for this film was phenomenal. Whether it was camera work, sound editing, anything like that was just absolutely top notch. Like I really can't believe like this is like, I'm just gonna say it honestly, the first really great DC DC CU like in this like really great. I think. I
mean, I get that. I still probably prefer like Shazam and even Birds of Prey. I think like would top this list for me.
True.
Again, like, but I'm gonna be a lot harder on this one because I didn't like the gore and the uber violence, and so those movies are just more my jam, more my speed. But I mean, this is definitely like in the top tier of the DC films.
Now that you mentioned Shazam and Birds of Prey, I was like, oh yeah, Cameron, you dumb bitch. Those films exist. Like 100%, like it's up there for me with those two. I think it's higher for me than Shazam. And like I don't know, like I love Birds of Prey. It's phenomenal. It's really, really great. But at the same time, I really, really enjoyed just the motive, like the motion and action of this film.
Mm-hmm.
Because I feel like from beginning to end, it doesn't ever really stop. Like everything is moving. Even if the characters aren't moving, they're moving in a direction. And I just feel like that's consistent and constant in this film. And it really comes to an end really well because of it. So,
yeah, I mean, so there was an element, and while I like it, it also really messed with the pacing for me in this film. And that was like the Harley kind of midsection of the film, like her whole, story beat feels a little too much like, well, Margot Robbie's our big star, and so we got to give her, the most time. And again, like while I like that, I like the moments she has in there. I love, her being super into this guy, and then as soon as he starts talking about killing kids, just immediately turning on the dime and shooting him. Like and then like also gives some great fight scenes, like in her escape and stuff. But it felt like such a long detour from the rest of the squad that I just found myself like wanting to get back to and spend more time with them, or just getting her back to them sooner. And so it's just a little too extended for me to feel like it fit in like completely naturally. But I get the reasoning behind it. I get, Harley Quinn is, of the characters is the big name of, the squad and stuff. So she, it makes sense to give her like a minor little B plot storyline thing in and of itself.
Hear me out though. If you were somebody who had seen the original Suicide Squad film and then you didn't see Birds of Prey and then you saw this film, do you think that is a good reason to show off like she has had a very like large growth of character in between the two films?
I mean, I don't think
That's fair.
So.
I was curious. As somebody who hasn't seen the first film, I don't know where her journey ended at the beginning of that film. I just know where it starts in Birds of Prey. And like I was curious if like because of the transition and her character growth in Birds of Prey, if you needed to like if they were trying to take care of a suspension of disbelief issue from where she ended at the end of the last Suicide Squad movie. Yeah,
I mean, if anything, like there's what that like throwaway line when she gets on the helicopter of like, what are you doing back in, Harley? Because it is like there's an element more there of like, well, yeah, she was out, doing her own thing in Birds of Prey. Why is she back, like, having to run with the Suicide Squad? Why does she presumably have a bomb in her neck again? Like, what's going on there? And so, like, that I think does, like, even less of a job to try and, like, explain how we got from point A to point B.
I was just curious if that could have been a reason for it.
Yeah, like, as for character growth, I don't think so. I don't think there was... Like, I mean, it definitely is like this is a liberated Harley from the Joker, which is like where that character ends the first movie, I guess. But then again, like, she is, suddenly back with the Joker for Birds of Prey. So it's like, if you missed Birds of Prey somehow, like, it does feel like they're all kind of disjointed enough. Like, yes, Harley, you could, like, make the argument that Harley has, like, an overarching arc, but you could also probably make the argument of, like, well, they didn't really pay too much attention between, like, character, like, she has not had a 3-act structure of, like, this is where she was in the first Suicide Squad, this is where she went in Birds of Prey, and now this is where she is in this one. Like,
that's fair.
I think the maybe the best, like, moment you get of that would be the payoff of, like, her excitement that they actually came and, like, were ready to save her. Because
that was so sweet.
She doesn't have, like, she wouldn't have had that with the Joker. Like, the Joker clearly never would have, like, come in and saved her. And, very, very, like, kind of, like, almost deliberately, I think, doesn't in the first, like, he saves her, but then he's, like, also very content to, like, let her go. So yeah, it's weird, and it just feels like it didn't, like, doesn't, like, completely, like, knock the movie down or anything like that for me. But it just, like, in the pacing wise of things, it felt like we've got a Suicide Squad movie, and we're going to take, like, a short detour for 10-15 minutes of a Harley Quinn side story, and then we're going to put her back into the Suicide Squad movie.
That's fair.
Yeah.
I was just curious, once again, just reiterating the point where I was curious if they wanted to do that because of where things ended in the first film, but as somebody who hasn't seen it, I would not have known. So I wanted to ask. Thank you for answering.
Yeah, I mean, I think even James Gunn has kind of come out and said, like, this is, well, like, clearly, while they've kept some of the same actors in the roles from the first movie, like, this one isn't really, like, contingent. Like, if you didn't see the first movie, you're not going to miss anything really on this one. And it's like, even I think Joel Kinnaman kind of came out in interviews and basically was like, it was really cool because I basically got to, like, press reset on this character and, give a different interpretation for it. And he gets much more to do in this one versus, like, the last one. He was just kind of like, the faceless military guy in, like, any Transformers movie basically or whatever. And he's, like, just the squad leader, and he's the one that doesn't have a bomb in his head and all that stuff. Whereas this one, he actually got to, like, while he's still playing the straight man for a lot of it, he got to play the straight man in funnier ways, and he got to basically bounce off some of the other characters in more interesting ways, I think.
When they go to rescue Harley and her reaction when Flag says, "We're here to rescue you," and, like, her, like, about to break into tears of being so excited that somebody cared enough to rescue her, and he was like, "It was a really good plan." Well, I can go back inside and you can do it.
That's patronizing. Yeah,
that's patronizing. It's so, like, I really liked it, and so getting to see that and then Flag dying, and I was like, oh no, I want to see more of him and Harley do more stuff together. And it's really sad, but at the same time, it really sets up Peacemaker as a real giant bag of dicks. Yeah. That if that beach was covered in dicks, I had to eat them all for freedom, I would do so.
Yeah, and then I like, so that was a line that was given away in the trailers and stuff. But then I appreciated the follow up that hadn't been given away. That was basically like, I think Idris Bloodsport basically saying, like, I think you just use Liberty as a scapegoat to to
do whatever you want.
Do whatever you want, whether that's kill kids or eat dicks. I was like, yeah, thank you, Bloodsport.
Like, so good. Also, massive shout out to Bloodsport's mask. Because like the rest of his outfit, it is 100% like minimalist, expanded upon when he does something with it, and it was just like, one, I love the design of it with everything else about his outfit. Just the design of the mask with, like, the lower like villainous jawline to the otherwise black visor is super cool. The way that, like, he ends up losing it is awesome. It's Oh, that entire scene where he's like dropping down like level by level, and you can tell he's like, I am expecting to die at some point here, and then he lands, and it's just right in front of Peacemaker and Ratcatcher 2, and he just sees what's going on, and without even needing to say a word, like whips out his gun ready to go, and it's like it, and then of course the smaller bullet payoff. So good. God damn, this movie is so good, man. I had so much fun watching it.
Yeah.
It really is just like a fun, violent romp, which, you know, the violence in it makes it not for everybody, and that's okay. I don't know. Maybe there's somewhere out there that you could put together like a, like censor, like quote unquote censored version of the film that has just like cuts away from the violence before it like really like lingers there for like with Pete Davidson's face for like, you know, 30 seconds.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Any favorite deaths you guys want to give a shout out to on that topic, on the topic of the violence here, be it, you know, of any of the squad members or just any of the like brutal kills that Bloodsport or Peacemaker do. You already guys mentioned the hatchet one, that poor guy, like poor guy sleeping, just chop, 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 chop.
The guy who woke up and was like not wearing pants, and he opened his curtain to like get into a bath, and he just like was killed. Great. The dude who's like hanging out in his bath and Bloodsport.
Oh yeah,
does like the trick shot of the fan.
Yeah, the trick shot. Yeah, with the fan.
I love that.
Phenomenal. Anything having to do with that entire village scene, especially with the payoff being, well, why didn't any of my men come and tell me, like, notify me that you were here? Oh, we didn't see it.
Yeah, they must be gone. Yeah.
I thought that they were, I imagined they were my mother, and I murdered them. Like, so good. Yeah. So good on so many levels. There's Luna getting shot by Harley, and her giving this monologue of like red flags, you know, like you wanted to murder children, like, you know, hey, the Starro deaths where like Starro like lets out all of his like mini Starro clones and like just piles and rains it down on dudes. Great. The dude whose eyes are rolling around when he's in Killer Shark's mouth. Awesome.
One that I definitely loved is when it's John Cena, Peacemaker, and Bloodsport in the back of the truck together, and because I kind of like that little like mini sub adventure that they get to go on, and how they're all like the secret agent types, and I love the whole thing with Idris Elba when he takes like the cigarette, and then he starts going over the names of like how to kill a man in one hit, and then he's like ready, and then all at the same time they just kill all three of those dudes, and then they unhook each other, or they unhook themselves, and then when John Cena just takes the shotgun and you could see it in the mirror and he blows that dude's head off, like I was like, I love that whole sequence. Like that was definitely something that I loved, and I think that had like a couple of the cool like deaths that you don't typically see.
Yeah,
not a death line, not a death, but a phenomenal line is when Ratcatcher 2 is talking to the Thinker. She goes, "Well, what if I just have a rat run its way up your ass? You might be surprised by my aunt."
Yeah, a dozen
by
rats.
My answer.
Yeah, how would you like a dozen rats? You know, crawled inside your ass. Yeah,
you might be quite surprised by the answer that I'll be giving you.
Yeah,
it's like phenomenal. Peter Capaldi as the Thinker is fucking great. Like his death is brutal and gruesome, but deserving for the mad scientist who's been experimenting on this poor alien.
Yeah, and he's only pissed because a run-of-the-mill coup is going to ruin all of his work. Yeah,
and then a run-of-the-mill coup. Damn you, Peter Capaldi.
I also want to give a shout out. Obviously, he doesn't die because we see he's alive in the first credits, but like Weasel, like going into the water and just like flailing about, and Rick Flag just being like, "Did anybody check to see if the Weasel can swim?" And then that just like slow look from Amanda Waller at like the Steve Agee character, whatever, just being like, well, whatever. That does remind me, like one of the things I like in the broader scale of like, I think this is a moment where I'm like, oh, I don't like that choice. I feel like Amanda Waller being knocked out by the driver, like the next time we see her like conscious, all of those people should just be dead bodies around her. Especially because that is kind of how like she was set up in the first Suicide Squad movie. Like her team is expendable. and she has no qualms killing them. So the fact that like we come back to her and she's just like icing her head and kind of looking out as like the team is celebrating that they, you know, saved the day or whatever, like that did not strike me as Amanda Waller-esque. That's the one like from a real like that's the one down I would give it from like a bigger storytelling point. Like the other thing was just like a pacing thing. This just doesn't feel true to who that character is from my understanding of the comics, especially like because especially in as violent as James Gunn is being with this, it feels like that could have gone a very different way.
Yeah,
like
here's the thing, I would have minded it even if they had just thrown in a line at the end when the two people were talking. It's like, instead of it being like, is this like her revenge for like us, like, you know, knocking her out, being like, I really don't want to do this. Well, did you want to end up like whatever that girl's name was?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And like her and her family and anybody that she knew that wasn't on our team? No. Yeah, neither do I. Or like just basically like point out like Amanda Waller is like a terrible human being and we should not be celebrating her whatsoever. Even though she's played phenomenally by Viola Davis.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Once again, the queen of acting coming into like and just showing us how it's all done. Her, oh my God, when she's telling them like, as long as the data that was stored there and the facility's been destroyed, your objective is complete.
Yeah,
like rendezvous for pickup, and just like that, just brutal, like so good, so damn good.
Yeah, so that was like the one thing I wanted to get like basically give as like a bigger criticism was like that didn't work for me in her final beat. And yeah, like part of me is curious if it is because like those two people that do see Peacemaker in the post credits are going to be in the Peacemaker series that's going to be happening. So it was like maybe there was a version that did kill off all those people, but then they were like, well, we're going to now do this Peacemaker spinoff thing, so let's go ahead and keep some of them alive as like staffers of that maybe. But yeah, it just felt like that just didn't feel Suicide Squad-y or Amanda Waller-y enough. But yeah,
fair enough.
Also, shout out to Sean Gunn being in there as Calendar Man. That was a fun little,
absolutely,
appearance of
so good.
of a character I was not expecting to see on the big screen. And
just giving
like
shit to Polka Dot Man.
Exactly. Yeah. Just being a dick. Yeah.
Just like one D tier villain to another D tier, and fuck you.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. Any other moments or anything else anybody wants to give some love to, give a highlight to, or should we start wrapping it up?
There's actually one thing I did want to give a shout out to. I loved the, like, I don't know if you want to call it like the chapter breaks or like the, kind of like the names of like whatever that would set up everything. Even going back to the beginning when Michael Rooker's head blows up and it says Warner Brothers Presents in the water.
Yeah.
And like I loved that, and then they just kept doing that, and I thought a lot of those are actually really creative in the way they use the scene and the environment. Like the one that I also thought was really creative when it was all the junk that like piled up together, and then the camera moves and you can see that it's just kind of a bunch of different pieces separated. But when you look at it and that one angle, it says like Operation whatever.
It was Jotunheim was that was
oh
that
yeah
was that
it was
one.
that
It was
one.
like they're on the rooftops about to talk to the Thinker and do that whole like, if you do this you're dead, if you do this you're dead, if you have personalized license plates you're dead. Wait, no. that's not a thing. Yeah, I enjoyed those as well.
That's a derogatory kind of derogatory.
Yeah, I enjoyed those, like the transition like chapter names as well. I thought they were usually very like uniquely done. Like the one there was the like Operation, I don't remember what it was going to be called, but Operation whatever, and it's like in flames, and then like Rick Flag's like, no, we got to do one thing first, and then it's like Operation Harley.
It's Operation Jotunheim, and then it blows itself out in the smoke. Turns into Operation Harley.
Those were a lot of fun. I agree as well. Like even because it wasn't even like chapters always. Like sometimes it was like 3 days earlier or something like that when you go back to like Belle Rev and you find out, oh, she was like creating two teams or whatever. What did you guys think from a structural perspective of seeing everything with the Rick Flag stuff and then like rewinding time and going back to like the Milton sequence and the Peacemaker, like leading back up to Peacemaker coming to kill Rick Flag. Like it felt like a weird, just like structural thing again, but that just might be because I'm conditioned to expect multiple planes of action instead of like we're seeing things from one perspective. Now let's go see things from the other perspective.
I think it was all right. Like it didn't necessarily throw off the pacing for me, but I can kind of see what you're saying. But like for me, because like the movie I think does just kind of keep going and going and going, even though there's a lot there. And I think you bring up some good points where it does kind of like detour or does kind of show you some other things there. But like for me, I didn't necessarily have a problem with it.
Okay, cool. All right. Well, any other moments or last thoughts we want to give a shout out to?
I did really like the fight between Peacemaker and Rick Flag. Like I know we kind of talked about the end mainly, but that fight leading up to that is really cool and really well choreographed. And it kind of goes back to not to compare it to F9, but it kind of goes back to that like seeing John Cena fight another like huge dude one-on-one. And like I think that it was just super well choreographed, and I like that. Another thing I love is that it uses the environment. Like when he like there's a couple different things where he like throws him through something, and like I love when he kind of tosses him down and his foot like shatters the sink on the wall. Like and that's what kind of like breaks the porcelain out that he uses later. But that's what I'm like, I think that's like all really cool and a good like it's all choreographed so well, and then I think it's even just creative,
Yeah. I want to give a shout out to the like the finale where Harley realizes what the javelin was for and like goes flying into Starro's eye, and then like just the weird surreal like beauty / grotesqueness of like her swimming in the eye fluid as all the rats come in and start like eating the nerve endings and stuff, and then like just the like all that starts filling up with blood. It's just like, oh,
that
God.
was awesome.
Yeah, it's like it was like a moment I was not expecting to see, or I would not have been expecting to see had I not already read about to expect to see it. But it's definitely one of like, yeah, that's I guess that's how you would take out that giant Starro. And then yeah, as I think you mentioned earlier, Cam, the his beautiful kind of like little last line of I was happy in space looking at stars. Yeah, just all these characters are just like misunderstood or whatever it is, except Peacemaker. Peacemaker's just an ass, just a douche. All right. Well, I think that is going to do it for this episode then. Thank you guys for joining me to talk about The Suicide Squad. Let's go around the metaphorical table with any plugs we might have. You can follow Cameron at Rev Cabot. Anything you want to give a shout out to there, Cam?
Yeah, there is. I want to give a massive shout out to the Let's Plays that Trevor's been doing. I just caught one of his recent flight simulator ones. He's doing a great job over at youtube.com/thatnerdy site. Really just putting an effort in, putting out those videos. They're a lot of fun. Go check them out, especially the fun ones that he does with Logan in Operation Tango. It's a ton of fun. It's been great watching kind of like, Trevor move into this Let's Play space of kind of like production and design as far as like his like what he's doing, what he's recording. It's been great seeing that growth. And also, shout out to him playing Final Fantasy XIV. Trevor, you played for how many hours just to get the minion drop that you wanted from a trial raid?
It was only 2 hours, but it was like, and that was actually like the third night of trying. So, but yes, it was 2 hours just to get the Ultros minion. And it was like just 2 hours. What trial was that like, from? That is the Dragon's Neck, I think. Where you basically fight Ultros and Typhon. It was, I mean, it's like, it's an easy enough thing, but it was, okay, I'm signing up for the Duty Finder and I'm, running around for 15 minutes while I wait for it. And then we do it. And it was, I loved the best part was the time I finally got the minion was the one time I died in that. And like, I died halfway through. Cause like the part of the thing in that trial is like, oh, if everybody gets knocked off the sides, it'll be like a team wipe or whatever. And I got knocked off and died because I was like an imp or whatever at the time. And then they just like nobody on my team saw that I was out, so nobody ever tried to like bring me back in. Nobody ever tried to resurrect me. So finally, like they ended it and they won. And then like I ended up getting the minion drop, and I was like, cool, I will take it. Now I don't have to do this one anymore. But yeah. Yeah, I'm having a ton of fun with Final Fantasy 14 online. Playing through the Heaven's Word stuff now at this point.
I just want to say, ladies and gentlemen, we got him. You don't like Trevor is a real MMO boy now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I want to point that out.
I've been doing the duty roulette thing, and like there's another one. 3 nights in a row. I got actually 4 nights in a row. I got pulled into the end game ones as the duty roulette, but like 3 nights in a row, it was like the same one. It was like the penultimate one where it's just like you're running through, you're turning off searchlights, and then you're fighting the girl in white at the end. So it's just like, well, I'm doing this one again. Now at least I know what to do, and so I'm the one out there turning off the searchlights and being in a more active role in the thing. But yeah, it's fun, having a good time with it.
I feel so proud.
Thank you.
I feel so proud.
I'm glad. You can follow Frank at Irrelevant Jokes. Anything you want to give a shout out to there, Frank?
Yeah, I wanted to give a shout out to our other podcast, That D Plus Show. Right now, we're still in our summer of Star Wars, and last week's episode that you can listen to now is about the Clone Wars. And I thought that was fun. It was my first time watching it, and it was fun to watch and discuss it with you guys. And I'm very excited for the next episode that'll be up a couple days after this one. That'll be Rogue One, because that's one of my favorites.
Cool. Yeah, you can follow me at Trevor J. Starkey. I will echo all those shout outs, as well as That News You Care About, the last of our podcasts, where you can go check out. Last couple weeks, it has been, dour news as we've been talking about the Activision Blizzard lawsuit. That is unlikely to change coming into this week with whatever new updates we've had there, as well as just some of the other terrible stories we've seen in the industry this last week. So if you're looking for a bad time, come listen to us talk about that stuff, I guess. But otherwise, yeah, you can enjoy our thoughts on Star Wars, or our Let's Plays, or our general thoughts here on That Nerdy Site Show, where we usually talk about, the things we're playing or watching. But then occasionally we will do kind of these special one-offs that are, let's just focus the entire episode on the newest movie that came out and talk about, Spoilercast stuff. So you can find all of that over at thatnerdysite.com, or go follow at thatnerdysite on Twitter. Once again, if you liked what you heard, please remember to like, subscribe, rate, review, and maybe even consider supporting us over on Patreon at patreon.com/thatnerdysite, where every patron gets early access to a monthly bonus episode of this very podcast. This month's early access episode is the 3 of us talking about kind of our Game of the Year watch 2021, based on the games that have already come out this year, as well as kind of what we still see ahead of us in the calendar, talking about all that fun stuff. It was a good, a good beefy boy of a podcast. So it's like 3 hours if you want to go listen to that. Well worth the $1, as they say. But as always, thank you for listening. Stay nerdy and be good to each other.